Just so everybody understands that once the public hearing is adjourned, and it has been, Council cannot entertain any further submissions or correspondence from the public on the proposed bylaw. And at the conclusion of the hearing, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? 617. Thank you. Good evening, and again, welcome to the January 21st regular meeting of Council. We're going to have the adoption of the minutes for a Council meeting held December 17th, special Council meeting held December 18th, and for a Council meeting held December 20th, 2018. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Chandler. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, I've got a little red note here, so I'm checking it out. In addition to the items on the agenda, I would ask for a resolution from Council to adopt the minutes of the special Council meeting held January the 7th. Do I have a mover and a seconder for those? Councillor Fraz, and seconded by Councillor Greer. All those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried. Thank you. I need a mover for and a seconder for the agenda for today. All those, Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Fraz. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We have 3 delegations tonight. So if the first delegation would come up, it's Partnership for Water Sustainability in BC, Vancouver Island Symposium on Water Stewardship in a Changing Climate.
And when you're done, you just press sing button.
Gentlemen, you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Main and Council, for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Peter Law. I'm here representing the local streamkeepers, Mid-Vancouver Island Habitat Enhancement Society. I'm here with Big John Finnie, who's from the Partnership for Water Sustainability. Just a little information about our organizations first off. For my organization, MIVIS, we're a Parksville-based charitable not-for-profit society. Our mission is conservation and restoration habitat related to salmon, including watersheds, estuaries, and shorelines, connecting people and their landscape through partnerships focusing on field study and restoration. The Partnership for Water Sustainability in BC is a not-for-profit society based in BC, and its mission is to facilitate water sustainability through green infrastructure with a focus on community and regional land planning, and promote strategies that integrate decisions about land use and conservation with water sustainability outcomes. So that's us. John and I are here this evening to inform and invite Council and staff to an upcoming event here in Parksville in April. We're partnering with the Regional District in Nanaimo and the Nanaimo Area Land Trust to host a 2-day symposium and 1 day of field trips here in Parksville. This is the second year we've hosted a workshop entitled Water Stewardship in a Changing Climate. Last year the event was held in Nanaimo. The theme of this year's event is Improving Where We Live Through Restorative Development. You might ask, how did we come up with that theme? Well, I'll say good question. Today in coastal BC we experience climate change primarily through water. Intense rainfall, floods, droughts, and so on. Major driver of economic growth in the 21st century will be responding to climate change, how we revitalize our watersheds, our cities, and our towns, and rehabilitating and expanding our ecosystems. What happens on the land matters to streams and fish. We need to connect hydrology and ecology. Development reduces the capacity of the landscape to absorb and hold water. Development, and when it rains, it is more flow volumes and streams erode. In a drought, there's little or no flow as the surrounding land dries out. Thus, the goal of restorative development would be to restore hydrology of our watersheds. Now, looking at the program outline for Parksville 2019, delegates will learn how communities can apply science-based understanding to increase their restorative footprint and at the same time decrease their destructive footprint. So this is a 3-day event. In day 1, on April the 2nd, delegates will take part in a tour of the new ERWS, Englishman River Water Service, water treatment facility, or attend a session on improving stream function, and we're going to do that on a small tributary in the Englishman called Shelley Creek. Day 2, the theme is sustainable stream restoration, with a number of presentations focused on adaptation of a whole system watershed approach. Day 3, the presentations will focus on a theme of restorative land development that's already happening across Vancouver Island. Now, on the evening of April 3rd, we'll have a free public lecture in the conference center. We've invited a thought-provoking economist from the U.S. by the name of Storm Cunningham to speak. The title of Storm's lecture is going to be "Nature is Regenerative, We Should Be Too." He has been called the world's thought leader on community revitalization and natural resource restoration. And everywhere one turns these days, some of the words renewal, restoration, regeneration appear. Storm Cunningham was the catalyst of that global re-trend with his book, The Restoration Economy, published in 2002. So, because restoration comprises the largest new economic growth cycle since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, says Storm, it's essential we get it right so that this time, by designing our communities with nature. Now, I'm going to leave the hard sell to John.
Thanks, Pete. It's over to me to do the ask. And yeah, Pete's right. I always get stuck with the tough part. First of all, before I get into that, I'd just like to thank the City of Parksville for their letter from Council last fall. I believe it was in September or October, supporting the partnership's application to the Real Estate Foundation of BC for grant funding to cover some of the costs of putting on this symposium. That application, I'm pleased to announce, was successful, and it provided some funds to offset our costs. I believe that the city's letter was quite an assist in winning those funds. So we have a budget for this particular event of $50,000. We've secured about half that so far. We have a number of sponsors that you will see up there: the Partnership for Water Sustainability, the RDN, the Real Estate Foundation, the Nanaimo Area Land Trust, the Pacific Salmon Foundation, the Mid-Vancouver Island Habitat Enhancement Society, and DFO. There's a couple of others that we've approached. We have not heard back from them positively yet, but we're hoping that we will get some additional funds from those other potential sponsors. We're going to request that the city consider becoming a sponsor with a donation or a contribution of about $2,500. The funds from the city could go to various things. For example, it could cover the cost of purchasing the lunches for the delegates that are coming to the event. As a guide to help you, for last year's symposium, which was held in Nanaimo, the city of Nanaimo contributed $2,600 to the event. We don't want Parksville to be constrained or controlled by what the city of Nanaimo did. Of course, you're free to go as high as you wish, or any amount would be very welcome to the group who's putting this on. So that's about all we had to say. Thank you very much for the opportunity to allow us to address you this evening. We look forward to Parksville's participation in and support of the event. we would be very pleased to add your logo to the sponsor page. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very interesting. Good luck with your symposium. I know it's something that is well needed in the area. Are there any questions from the council? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll call the second delegation to come up, the to talk on the Brant Wildlife Festival, the update for the 2019. It's amazing how time flies.
Great, thank you. I'm Lynn Brookes, 1418 Memorial Drive in Arrington, and I'm a volunteer, community volunteer for the Brant Wildlife Festival, a celebration of as many of you know, a celebration of nature, and especially of Brant geese, as they rest and feed along our shores, along the eastern mid-Vancouver Island area, before continuing their arduous journey of migration up to their northern breeding grounds. We're fortunate to live in an internationally recognized biosphere region, which is also designated an important bird area. As winter gives way to spring, and our coast is full of things happening. It is a happening place with herring spawning, eagles gathering, and tens of thousands of migrating birds of many species seen along our shores, including the Brant. The Wildlife Festival has been an important part of spring in Parksville since 1991. It was started by a Parksville businessman, Bashir El Kawafawi, who was the manager of the Bayside and president of the Parksville Chamber of Commerce, and Neil Daw, who worked for the Canadian Wildlife Service. Today, as then, community organizations provide a variety of festival activities and events that encourage locals and visitors, children and adults, to get outdoors to enjoy and to learn about the natural wonders around them. Carrie?
My name is Carrie Pearcey, and I'm the community facilitator for the Brant Wildlife Festival. This year's theme is beaches, marshes, and estuaries, which Parksville has a lot of. How many here have ever been to a Brant Wildlife Festival event? Awesome. That's great. So I'm here to provide the details about the festival and hopefully inspire those of you who haven't been to come to some of the events and bring your friends with you. Last but not least, I'm also here to request continued financial support for the festival. The City of Parksville has been a champion of the Brant Wildlife Festival for many years. The city provides $5,000, which is crucial for the survival of the festival. We are very grateful for this support. The Brant Wildlife Festival is a celebration of nature, especially Brant geese as they rest and feed on the shores of mid-Vancouver Island before continuing their migration to the northern breeding grounds. The festival encourages locals and visitors, children and adults, to get outdoors and learn more about the natural wonders around them, as Lynn has already said. Over 25 events take place during March and April, including Brant in the Bay at Parksville Community Park, guided wildlife viewing, a bio blitz, guest speakers, and an eagle release. The Nature Trust of British Columbia is a non-profit land conservation organization with properties across the province along the Englishman River. They coordinate the Brant Wildlife Festival with a part-time coordinator. We work with the Parksville Qualicum Beach Tourism, the Chamber of Commerce, Parksville Qualicum Beach News, the beach radio station, and other local businesses to make the festival a success. The budget for the festival is a very modest $14,000 plus $5,000 in kind provided by the Nature Trust. We apply for a grant each year and are appreciative to receive the support from Parksville City Council. We receive modest support from Mid-Island Co-op at $1,000, and some years received from the town of Qualicum Beach, $2,500, TD Friends of the Environment, $1,500, The Beach Club Resort will be promoting a Dine for Nature event, for which they'll donate proceeds from meals once a week during the festival. We would also like to see the city promote our festival on your website and other ways. So I've put together just a little video montage of past festival events, and I'll just play it for you now. So that gives you an idea. When it comes to volunteering, the number of people who volunteer their time and effort to make this festival a success is through the roof. It could not be afforded if you were paying them wages. If you take a look, you've got two handouts in front of you. One is about the black Brant goose. And for those of you who may not understand, oh, I'm sure you do, about why dogs aren't allowed on the beaches. This gives you an idea of what this poor little Brant are trying to do. And if you look at the handout here, this gives you a list, and it's not completely comprehensive. We have a few more to go. And it gives you a list of many of the events that are planned. So we very sincerely hope that you continue to fund our event, and we appreciate certainly all the past efforts you've done. If you have any questions, we're here.
Thank you. Very interesting. Love the pictures. It was great. Any questions from the council? Councillor Greer?
Thank you, Your Worship. When are the first Brant? When did they first come to the town of Parksville?
It changes every year. They're coming earlier and earlier. Lynn would know more about that than I do.
Actually, it's interesting, but ever since the rule came around about not allowing dogs running freely on the beach, which frightens the birds, they waste energy flying away, they can't eat, etc., the numbers have started going up. And actually, there's some now that are spending the winters here, which is, they used to do that. Many years ago, back in the 1800s, they were a primary food source. They were shipped by the barge loads to Vancouver and Victoria. It was free food, but that really decimated their numbers, and they left our shores and started going just down to Mexico and just bypassing Vancouver Island, except in the spring. And it's interesting. We've been recording and doing Brant counts for decades now, keeping track of the population. So it's holding steady, and it may be going up, but it certainly worked. There was a real change, a real spike after the dogs off the beach began. So it works. It's good. Positive news. And yeah.
I had a discussion with someone down on the beach, and I noticed quite a number of small Canada geese. And I suggested they were Canada geese, and this fellow said he thought they were brants, but I thought it was too early for brants at this time of year to be grazing in the park.
I would like to just comment on that. I was talking to Sandra Gray, and she is just a birder extraordinaire. And a couple of weeks ago in our email conversation, she had mentioned that she had seen some brant already, and that was a couple of weeks ago. So they could easily be brant.
And would they be feeding in the park on the grass?
I can't answer that, but you might be able to.
Yeah. Not on the grass. They're critters that tend to use the algae, the seaweed, and the sea lettuce and such, and that's what they eat primarily. It's in the water. They're a sea goose. They don't graze out on the lawns and grass. There are smaller and larger Canada geese. But looking at your brochure, or showing it to your friend, neighbor, there's a real definite look to the brant that's quite different from that of a Canada goose.
And my understanding about geese, and I'm no expert, there's the ones that are problematic, that chew up all the eel grass and things like that. There's also migratory ones that are not necessarily the brant. Am I wrong?
The Canada goose that people are concerned about here are not native geese. They were brought in from the east coast of Canada. They're much larger and heavier, and they stay year-round. We also have Canada geese that are smaller, that do migrate, that are native to this area. They're a smaller Canada goose. The problem with the Canada geese that were brought in for hunting, basically, is that they stay year-round and they eat the food source they prefer, including eelgrass, but they rip it up, and also along the estuary banks, the grasses, they pull them right up by the roots. That's the big problem. Then erosion happens, and the whole estuary can be destroyed by having too many geese out there. The brant are very different. They just nibble on the leaves, and when the herring roe is stuck on the algae, the seaweed and such, they just nibble it off the top, but they don't pull everything out by the roots. They do not damage the estuaries.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
There's no further questions. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. Mark, did you have questions? Sorry. Councillor Chandler.
Through your worship. Thank you, ladies, for the presentation. That was very interesting. Great video. I guess one of the questions I'd have is, obviously there's some spin-off financially to some of the local hotels and restaurants and places of that nature in this. What do you think the impact is for people coming into town during these festivals?
Blaine Seagulls. We've been working also with Blaine Seppos, and he would be able to give you a better number on that. But there's definitely some impact, because just being out and about, there are many people that come from other parts on the island, from the mainland and internationally. We're actually going to start working ahead for 2020. We had a meeting, Al Greer was involved, and so we can advertise it internationally. This kind of an event can bring thousands of people from elsewhere, but the word needs to get out, but that takes money. So it's, one of the chicken or the egg type thing. But we are very interested in doing that. Other communities have eagle days and stork days and pelican days, and they're big, and thousands of people come. Birds are big, they're really important, and a real attraction. We've got them here, and they're here for free. How can we benefit them and people coming into the community?
That's great, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely a time of the year. I actually make sure I'm always wearing my hat too, which is good. But one of the things I would like to say, have you ever contacted and spoken with the Chamber of Commerce in regards to trying to fund some of this too as well? Because there is obviously a spin-off in that side.
In past years, there was a lot of support. I don't know why, but the last several years, there hasn't been any. We've spoken with Kim Burden in the past. We've met with people in Qualicum Beach, the women there. And they think it's nice, but they don't see how it's going to benefit them directly. And that's always been the question. The main thing we're asking at this point is just simply to put the poster out. If they're selling books, they could put out nature-type books out front, maybe do a 10% discount or something. If it's clothing, there are all kinds of winter clothing that's out. So there are ways people get engaged. We have spoken with chambers of commerce, and there just hasn't been a whole lot of reaction. And we're promised a lot, but nothing actually happens. So, thank you. Good question, though.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Greer?
Thank you, Your Worship. One of my brilliant ideas when I was at your meeting was the 30-foot Brant statue. How well did that go over?
Like a 30-foot.
like a 30-foot Brant statue. No, it's a good idea, but it may be something down the line. I mean, maybe a first thing is getting a better sign up that announces proudly that we have a Brant Wildlife Festival here. That would be a good start too, but it's a neat idea.
Yeah.
We'll just have to see. Do you
Yeah,
have the
thank
money
you.
for it?
I've got some other ideas. I'll let you know later. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Greer. There are no further questions. Thank you very, very much. And for our third delegation, District Group, the official community plan amendment and zoning and development bylaw amendment application for 375, 379, 383, and 385 Moilliet Street South.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thank you, Mayor, Council, for having us tonight. We don't often get a chance to be able to speak on our project or introduce ourselves this early in a process, so we appreciate that. Hopefully you'll find, you'll get to know us a little bit better and understand what we're looking to do with respect to our project. So I guess as is in our application, we own 4 pieces of property on Moilliet Street and Desperate Avenue. I'll get a little bit into the details of what we're looking to do there, but I guess just to give a little bit of an outline to our presentation, I'll introduce our group a little bit further, talk about the properties, we'll get a little bit into the OCP amendment and the rezoning application, in the planning context, and I guess why we feel it's a good site for rental apartment buildings, which is what we're proposing there. And then there'll be some chance for questions or feedback. So a little bit about us. So we're a Vancouver-based group. We have 10 employees. Amongst all our employees, have long history of developing real estate in Western Canada as well as the U.S. We historically have been involved in all asset classes, including residential, what we're proposing today, but it has included commercial, industrial, and fairly sizable projects along the way. We build to own, so we take a long-term view of constructing rental apartment buildings, so we're not merchant developers. We do build to own long-term, and I think accordingly we take a lot of pride in the planning and what we're going to inherit ourselves as far as a project. To give a sense of what we have going on, approximately 18 projects in 9 different municipalities, and it's somewhere around 2,500 to 3,000 rental units under various stages of development at the moment. We have a very, very large focus on Vancouver Island. Both my business partner and myself grew up in Port Alberni, and we have projects in Port Alberni, Comox, this one here in Parksville, handful in Nanaimo, and then 4 in the Victoria and the Greater Victoria area, as well as Lower Mainland and Interior. We very much like the island. Just to give you a sense of where the site is, maybe just a little bit about our proposal too in some generalities. So purpose-built rental apartment buildings, somewhere around 250 units is what we're looking at here. Will be a project that will happen in multiple phases. So we'll kind of build as the market tells us. I suspect it'll be a minimum of 2, but likely 3 phases. We believe, so I may back up, sorry. So as far as the OCP and the rezoning amendment goes, so current designations for transitional residential, we're looking to change that to multi-unit residential. Current zoning is RS1, representing the large lot single family, and the proposed zoning is RHD4, which is what the multi-unit residential OCP designation would support. So this does vary, obviously, from the current official community plan. We wanted to show these maps here because our belief there's a bunch of things that tie together, why we think it's a great apartment site, but why we think that there's positive context for the planning related changes to allow it to happen. Those center around proximity to commercial services, the shopping center that's proposed across Moilliet Street, the proximity to an employment base the medical center, also the school nearby. Moilliet is a transit route supportive of I guess, both multi-unit residential in the OCP, but as well as building an apartment building. And contextually, there is designated lands around that centered area currently in the OCP. To give some sense of sort of future land use, and we sort of always look for opportunities and constraints so that we can plan properly. We look at southern exposure for sun, obviously look at the context for community uses, parks, in this case the medical uses, the future commercial center across Moilliet Street, and then the adjacent lands in close proximity that are designated similarly to what we're proposing. You know, that being said, with what we think is a long list of opportunities, we're mindful that there is single-family neighborhood in context to this, and that certainly does drive the design to be sensitive to that. To focus in on the lower corner of this, we put together an early site plan. Again, this we anticipate will evolve as we work through the planning process. But the theme of addressing the context, all the positive context, we would also look to be addressing the neighborhood context of other land uses. In this case, moving the buildings as far away from the single-family neighborhood as we can towards the corner of Despard and Moilliet. The city owns a 20-foot lane that does separate there. We would then propose to be doubling that. And I believe there's a multi-use pathway that's proposed for there, but also the opportunity for a fairly wide, fairly healthy landscaped buffer. And then on top of that, a heavily landscaped parking lot. So, you know, what's showing up there has buildings about 150 feet away from any adjacent property of another land use. And again, more focused towards Despard and Moilliet to create a bit more of an urban edge along the road there. Again, to recap some of the things I mentioned, it's a very accessible site, both on transit, bike, pedestrians, and vehicles. Commercial services are right across the street. A fairly high employment base nearby, which will also include the commercial services. Despard and Moilliet is a transit route. And I guess maybe to center in on what we think the benefits for Parksville as a community in the city is, it does go a meaningful way in addressing rental vacancy, which I guess albeit is a little bit better as of fall of 2018, still historically low. And again, this is long-term supply that we're proposing to have here. It's also going to be varied in its unit type, its unit sizes and typology, so it will not be necessarily focused at any one age group or demographic group. We will have a range of unit sizes and unit types in the building. And I guess to sort of further benefits, I mean, there's a very large increase of the tax base that we'd be proposing, substantial contribution to DCCs in town. And for us, it represents about a $52 million investment into the city. And the tendency of when we get into these things, that $52 million of work is largely supplied locally through trades, sub-trades, and supplies. We were a long way from talking about architecture, but to give you a sense, and this plays into the philosophy of us building and holding long term, we do build a more condo quality specification than probably a lot of other new product that's built. Just to give you a sense of some styles of buildings that have driven design in other places. We have not picked a particular design theme here, but to give you a sense that the finishes will be of high quality, and they will be buildings that, you know, at a prominent corner will look good and be well landscaped and will be highly amenitized both indoors and outdoors for the tenants. And that concludes my brief presentation, and happy to answer any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for the presentation. So I want to ask whether or not you would ever consider leaving more green space and put parking underground or stack the parking, because there are 4 buildings there. So
So, yes, what's not, here, I'll go back to here. The, maybe I can, just gonna see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. So the site's 5 acres, and the green space that we've got distributed around the site totals roughly about 2 acres, so about 86,000 square feet. So that would include all the green space that's centered around the buildings as well as the buffer. The plan is certainly to have one building that will take up some of the parking underground. I think that as we work through the planning process, redistributing the green space is certainly something we can look at. I think a balance between how it is contextually, but also how it interfaces with the tenants of the buildings is something that we'd want to consider. I mean, as far as rental buildings and surface versus underground parking, I mean, there's a big affordability thing there. Buildings are a lot more expensive when you put underground parking in them. Frankly, rents aren't there, I guess, for lack of a better word. However, should they evolve, which we think they will over the course of developing the project, we have allowed for that to be part of it.
Do I have any other questions? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you for your presentation. It's not the first time that I've seen one on this parcel of land, so I've always been optimistic to see it developed, as it's one of the first entrances into the community. My question is, how many different developments do you have on the go with your company?
18 or so.
Okay.
Various stages.
Awesome. How much of a priority is this development?
High.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, very high.
Any additional questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, correspondence. We have 3 pieces of correspondence tonight. The Regional District of Nanaimo 2019 Council appointments to the District 69 Recreation Commission, and it's pursuant to Section 3B of the Regional District of Nanaimo District 69 Recreation Commission, Bylaw number 1777, 2018. Council is requested to appoint an alternate member to the District 69 Recreational Committee. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Fraz, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Any questions for staff? Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Second piece is from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, 2019-2020 FCM membership and optional outstanding advocacy fund. The City of Parksville is a member of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and received the annual membership renewal, which requests a voluntary contribution in the amount of $1,000 to the FCM Outstanding Advocacy Fund. Staff is seeking Council's direction regarding the optional contribution. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Fraz. Any questions for staff? Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the third piece is from the Parksville Beach Festival Society, request for financial support. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Chandler, second by Councillor Greer. Any questions for staff? Any discussion? Councillor Fraz?
Just have a question. This is regarding for the sand, what do they normally do with the sand after the festivals?
Mr. Mayor, you want me to answer? Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Frass, they have to dispose of the sand. They're not permitted to put it on the beach, but in previous years, there's been a couple of different things. Sometimes it's used for the beach volleyball, and in other years, it has just been disposed of by the society. If the Director of Engineering has anything to add, I believe this year they have to take care of disposing it themselves, but where we can, we try to share. Our staff will sometimes support, and we will use it for the volleyball courts.
If I may, Your Worship, the only other thing they're going to be trying this year, I believe, is they're going to be trying to store the sand in another location, arranged by them, and then to bring the sand back. So that's the only other thing they're going to be trying, I believe, this year.
Greer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I understand that over the years we've had a $2,500 line in our budget for the Beach Fest. This year they're increasing it to $5,000.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Greer, I believe it's been $5 for at least the last 2 years. I don't know if...
Well, I wasn't here the last 2 years, so I guess they raised it from 25 to 5 once I left.
I guess so.
Anyways, and most of that was due to the additional sand, the cost of the sand, I believe.
It could be, I can't comment on that request for the increase, but I know for at least since I've been in the corporate officer chair, it's been $5,000.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I'll make one. I would like to think that the smart move here would be to move this into budget discussions when we start those in the next few weeks. So if we could, let's, point number 2, I guess. So, all right. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell, would you please give us the background on the issue regarding the consideration of an official community plan and zoning development bylaw amendment application at 375, 379, 383, and 385 Moilliet Street South to facilitate a multiple unit residential development?
If I may, Your Worship, I'm going to be brief as it's being presented via the delegation this evening. This is an application to amend the official community plan to facilitate an apartment development and as well as amend the zoning bylaw to the RHD4 zone, facilitating up to a maximum of 262 units, proposed as rental apartment building. Further details are provided in the report and the recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this? Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Fraz. Any questions for staff? Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Reports. Mr. Russell, could you please give us the background on the issue regarding consideration of a new liquor primary license application for the Parksville Lawn Bowling Club at 149 Stamford Avenue?
Yes, if I may, Your Worship.
I'm sorry, I've got another little thing here that's, I apologize, Mr. Russell. Prior to considering the staff report, I will now ask for a resolution to receive the correspondence that was received in response to this application that was delivered to council. We received just this evening a letter on this. I think it was the only one on this. So we need to receive that, so I'm going to need a motion to receive that piece of correspondence. Moved by Councillor Fraz and seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Russell.
So since the application was presented to council, a notice sign was placed on the property and 2 newspaper ads have been run. As you mentioned, one correspondence was received this evening. The recommendations are as per the agenda and the items outlined in Schedule A of the report.
Yeah, go ahead. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation before we start. Moved by Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Wilson. Yes, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could direct this to staff, just for clarification, if possible, to remind me what the hours of operation were in this application?
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Patterson. The hours proposed were from noon till midnight daily.
At this point in time, if I had a concern with the hours of current operation, would that be directed now?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Patterson, as a body, Council can certainly say whether it's in support or opposition to the application and provide comment accordingly.
Any other questions? Councillor Chandler.
Through Your Worship, to staff, has this been the first time there's been an application at this property?
If I may, if I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Chandler, this is the first application that I'm aware of at this property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, only one of us have our microphone on at the same time, so we'll try it again. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now, I realize that we only had one correspondence for the Parksville Lawn Bowling Club's application, but it did raise a couple points that I wasn't really aware of, and I do foresee that there could be some new parking challenges and a change in the community by having a liquor license application. And while I'm absolutely for it, I believe that the hours of operation are a wee bit longer than I would probably like in a fairly residential area. So my question is, if we were to vote, it is basically on the application as it stands. So what would I be required to do if I, per se, wanted to change that from noon to 10?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Patterson, it's a slightly difficult question for me to answer in that the city is providing advice to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch, the Liquor and I can't get their new name straight in my head. The Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. I'll get it eventually. Council, certainly Council could pass as a body, if that's the opinion of the majority, a resolution in support as it stands, in support with noted concern over the hours, or in opposition to the proposal. I think you have three options really before you. The recommendations are obviously in the report with the full hours proposed, but certainly Council can pass a different comment onto the Liquor Cannabis Regulation Branch.
Any other comments? Councillor Patterson.
I apologize, Your Worship. So at this point in time, can I put forward a motion to have a comment that while we have a no objection, we would prefer that the Parksville Lawn Bowling Club look at changing their hours of operation? Is that feasible?
My guess here is we would have to put an amendment to the motion. Is that correct? Okay, so we would have...
So if I could have a friendly amendment?
No such thing, but...
There is.
No, there is, but you're making an amendment. All right, we need a seconder for that amendment. Councillor Wilson, are you seconding that amendment? Discussion? Seeing none, I will wade in for 30 seconds here and say that I don't really see the upside to the difference between the 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock. We're dealing with a lawn bowling organization who has a significantly more advanced aged group of members, and I'm not seeing that this is going to be midnight and partying out on the lawns or anything like that. I for one would say we'd leave it alone because of the fact that as soon as you open up any kind of question to the liquor licensing and whatever they are these days, we're going to give them an opportunity to turn it down, and I don't think we want to do that if we're in favor of it. That's just my humble opinion. Any other questions? Any other comments? Councillor Greer.
I'd echo those same words. I think we might put a stop to the whole issue if we come up with anybody's complaint or some other issues. I would suggest we leave it the way it is.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I agree with the same thing with the fact of leaving it the same without raising any red flags for the Liquor Control Board. I think would be the smartest thing. I think that this location has been operating for numerous years, and I mean, although we would like to kid ourselves, I'm sure that there's been some beverages there in the past, and at this point I would think that there's lots of responsibility attached to what they do there, I'm sure. So.
Just find the right button to push sometimes. All right, any other comments, questions? I will put it up for the vote then. This is on the amendment. No, this is on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, which is to change it? All those opposed? It's denied. Okay, now we go back to the original resolution. Any further questions or comments on that? Then I will call the question. All those in favor of the resolution? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Russell, would you please give us the background on the next issue?
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship. So we have a liquor license application. It's a structural change application at the Mount Arrowsmith Brewing Company at 109-429 Stanford Avenue East to facilitate an outdoor patio. This is the second time it's coming back to council after notice has now been done. So the applicant placed a notice sign on the property on January the 7th. Since then, 2 newspaper ads were published in the Parksville Qualcomm News on January the 8th and January the 15th. As of 4 p.m. this afternoon, a total of 32 correspondence were received in support of the application. Those have been distributed to council.
Prior to considering the staff, after considering the staff report and recommendations, I now ask that for a resolution to receive the correspondence that was received in response to this application. The correspondence was delivered to everybody at council just prior to the meeting, so I need somebody to receive it. Councillor Fraz, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. All right, now back to the recommendation that all correspondence received in response to the Liquor Manufacturing Board, Liquor Manufacturing Facility structural change application at the Mount Aerosmith Brewing Company, 109-425 Stanford Avenue East, file be received. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried. Thank you. Okay, we have a second motion, recommendation on this? Am I? I'm sorry. I've got, recommendation that the report for the Director of Community Planning and Building. Did we just pass that one? Okay. All right, let's keep going. Sorry. We're all set now? All right, reports. Mr. Figueroa. Issue regarding Council Resolution 18-370 to receive direction from Council regarding the consideration of making Alberni Highway Christmas lights a permanent display.
If I may, Your Worship, at the November 19th, 2018 regular Council meeting, Council carried the following motion, 18-370, that staff be directed to approach the Parksville Downtown Business Association or the PDBA to consider making the Alberni Highway Christmas lights a permanent display. Staffs have contacted the PDBA and we've received feedback. We've also completed some cost estimates to provide Council with the potential implications to the budget. The PDBA feedback was that the streetlights along Alberni Highway should coincide with their annual Christmas light-up effort and removal of the lights, which includes removal of the lights at the end of February, before the trees start to bud up and shift to daylight savings time. The cost implications of that, we've completed a cost estimation and along with our experience at taking up and putting down the lights there on a seasonal basis, and the cost implication is about $6,300 annually, and this would be to have the lights there for the Christmas display, and then they will be removed at the end of February. In our experience, about 15% of the lights need to be replaced due to wear and tear and vandalism and whatnot. A second scenario would be having the Christmas tree lights there maintained as a year-round permanent display. In that case, the cost would be $15,500. So the reason it moves up to $15,500 is that there's in having the lights there year-round. Basically due to wear and tear, most of the lights would need to probably be replaced anyways because of vandalism and wear and tear. Also, staff would need to go back and physically change the position of the lights so that they don't impact the health of the trees as the trees grow. Otherwise, they would get choked off, the different limbs. Also, if when the city crews go back there to do any trimming of the limbs and whatnot, they would have to move the lights again anyways. So it's a fair bit more expensive that way. One thing to keep in mind is that the additional handling is really where the cost is. The power itself isn't really the deciding factor here, I don't believe. So having the lights on the tree year-round is a little bit more difficult and a little more labor-intensive. Given that, there's a couple of things that Council may consider is having in budget deliberations also, if it gets down to the budget, the $6,300 versus the $15,500 is a consideration that council, if they wish to, can take to the budget deliberations. But as far as the PDBA is concerned, they would rather see it as a seasonal event.
Thank you, sir. Whoever comes first to the table gets to make their choice. They can make the recommendation for the $6,300, or they can make the recommendation for the $15,500, and we'll discuss it either way. So, Councillor Greer, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Which one are you going to take?
I'm hopefully can make a motion and we can clear this up fairly quickly. After talking to the engineer, I would recommend, we have two options in front of us. I recommend option A. It seems to be the cheapest and the easiest, and probably in the long run the more viable operation.
Yes, he is, but...
What?
She's just astonished that you're spending money, that's all.
No, this is the first. Pardon me. I'm in recommending option A. Sorry about that.
Okay, so what you're suggesting is that they come down.
Yes.
Come down, and it's going to cost us approximately $6,300.
Exactly.
Per
Thank
year.
you.
All right. I need a seconder for that. Councillor Patterson. Discussion? Councillor Chandler?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. I thought that, the downtown area is somewhat dismal at the time of year when the lights need to be up, I guess, in a sense. So I'm just wondering if we could even extend that period from somewhere in the area of before the Christmas light up, just to enhance the downtown a little bit more, and carry it right through to the end of March, possibly, just to give us a little bit more light down there and a little more pizzazz and a little more interest in people maybe being in that area. So that would be my only comment.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councillor Frass?
Curious as what the value or the cost of those lights are to begin with. If you have any kind of estimate, then I have a follow-up.
Sure. Ballpark it if you have to.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have the figures right in front of me, but the actual replacement cost for all of the lights, I would say it's in the neighborhood of probably $1,500. It's a fair number of lights. $1,500. That's and I'm just guessing there, but I don't have the figures right in front of me. But most of the cost is to labor.
Okay. And then I guess just based on that, we're at the option of taking them down each year. I'm in favor of that for the cost savings out of the two options, but as well with the PDBA at their preference of having it coincide with the Christmas light up. I think that's a good celebration they have as well, so I'd like to see their wishes followed through with there too.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question for the Director of Engineering. I'm just wondering whether or not there could be uplights on the trees once you take the Christmas lights down. So they're up all year, but you've got uplighting?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wilson. Are you talking about spotlights that are shining up?
Yes.
It's something we never considered. It's certainly something we can look at. But there is power. There is power there already, so yeah, we haven't really considered that one.
Can we possibly cost that out?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wilson, if Council would like me to do that, that's not a problem. I can have that information.
If we can address the motion on the floor, and then if anyone wants to raise another one, we can come back.
So, we have...
I made the motion. We need a seconder.
Oh, you
seconded?
We did
Okay.
that. We're way ahead of you on that
Okay.
one. Thank you. All right, so the question, I'll call the question for taking them down at the end. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Now, Councillor Wilson, just so we can put this in and maybe just quickly handle it if we can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm going to make a motion to cost out uplights, floodlights on the trees year-round, I guess, would be the time. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Oh, do you want to have a discussion? Sure. Sorry.
So this is something that I wouldn't support. While the idea of trying to beautify our streets and have lighting is something I would support, when we casting lights up into the sky, at the same time we have issues of light pollution out there, and so some of our things that we then ask other developers to have with their street side lighting is to have shading so that they're not illuminating up in the sky. So I think if we're going to be asking developers to be conscious about their lighting, that it wouldn't be prudent of us to make sure that we're not having floodlights cast up in the direction of the sky too. So I see it just being a little bit conflicting as us doing one thing, asking people to do another as well. So for those reasons, I wouldn't support it.
Councillor Wilson, I think I see your hand going up there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my understanding is that you can do uplights without having too much impact in the surrounding area. They don't have to be bright. They can be just very soft and under the foliage of the trees. And maybe they could just be in the summer then.
Any other conversation? Any discussion? All right. Let me quickly have a call a question. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Thank you. It's carried. Policy number 318.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report seeks council approval of an amended policy for the provision of food concession services in the community park. Council approved the community park master plan in 2018, and the plan contains recommendations for the continuation of food concession services. However, the existing policy is outdated and refers to a permanent concession building which was converted to expanded washrooms and change rooms in 2015. Since the building was renovated, Council has advertised for the provision of food concession services on an annual basis and has awarded the contract to the Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce for the last 4 years. The Chamber provides for seasonal food trucks on the 2 permanent pads which are located near the washrooms, and this had been done on a year-to-year basis while Council was awaiting the master planning process to be completed. The amended policy more accurately reflects the current situation, and if Council is supportive of continuing the food service, staff will advertise a request for proposals very quickly after tonight's meeting. But in order to gain administrative efficiencies, staff is also requesting support from Council to enter into the possibility of multi-year agreements with up to a 5-year term. This would mean that we don't have to advertise every year. We could consider renewals. And the reason why we wouldn't want to extend it beyond 5 years is due to some of the regulations with respect to when the city received the park. We're not permitted by that deed which granted the park to the city to extend anything beyond a 5-year term. And recommendations are per the agenda.
We need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Chandler. Any questions to staff? Any discussion? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was never one that was really in favor of these concession booths or whatever they're called to start with. And I would like, sooner or later, to see a proper concession down in our park. I know that's not going to happen this year, or maybe next year, or maybe our term. But I'd certainly want to keep that in mind, that at the end of the day, I think we deserve a really nice concession in the park with tables outside, umbrellas and so on. That would beautify our park more than what the food concessions do. anyways, I wouldn't be in favor. I could go along with the 5-year agreement so that it lessens the work for city staff. So, but I would also like to keep in mind that at the end of the day, I'd like to see a proper concession down there.
Any other comments? I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. For our bylaws, 2 readings and advance to public hearing, zoning and development amendment bylaw 2018 number 2000.122, a map and text amendment to downtown residential commercial DRC for 106, 110, 114, 120, 126, 132, and 140 Jensen Avenue West and 212 Alberni Highway. Councillor Greer, I understand that you may want to introduce an amendment regarding the public hearing date, so if you want to do that as we do.
Thank you, Your Worship. With respect to the public hearing date, I would like to make a friendly amendment that sets March the 4th, 2019 for the public hearing. So interested members of the public have more time to contact council to ask questions or make comments about the proposed new zone.
All right. I need a seconder for that. Councillor Wilson has seconded it. Discussion on this? From my perspective, I think it's an excellent idea to go an extra month longer so that because it's city-owned property, I think that it gives extra time for the residents to have a chance to have some input on what's being proposed here. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, city staff, in order to support council, will still proceed with putting the sign up. Yes. We typically wouldn't need to do it until 10 days before, but as Councillor Greer was saying, I think it would assist with letting the public know that that's something that council will be considering. So we expect to have the sign up on the property this week.
Thank you. I think opening up this conversation as wide as we possibly can for the residents of Parksville is very important. We want to have that transparency there, especially with this piece of property. All right. Any other questions? Any discussion on this? Great. I'll call the question, and all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. There are 8 bylaws on the agenda for final adoption, and prior to considering the bylaws for adoption, Council received 1 piece of correspondence in response to the proposed business license bylaw amendments pertaining to cannabis. Council, could I please have a resolution to receive that correspondence? Councillor Fraz, seconded by Councillor Greer. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Final adoptions. Can we do them all at once? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. If somebody wants to discuss any particular item on there, you can ask to have it pulled out, but I'd like to have a mover and a seconder that we accept all 8 of them at one time. Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Wilson. Any discussion on any of these? All right, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. New business. Does anybody on council have any new business? Please, if I may, I'd like to start off. Typically, I wait till the last, but I'd like to really, really thank staff and council for their help and participation in the Mayor's Roundtable on Saturday. You guys did a great job. It was very well received by the 65 people that attended. I've had nothing but very, very positive comments coming from all the attendees. I've been getting a number of emails and phone calls on it. Thank you very much. I think the 2 facilitators did an excellent, excellent job in putting it together. So from that perspective, thank you, thank you. It was a very good way to start the strategic planning process, and I appreciate it. Anybody else? Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Is this for new business? So I just have a few things to say from the Oceanside Community Arts Council, where I'm the liaison for that. So they will be making a presentation to council in February, and they want to thank the city for their support. And one of the liaisons was mentioning an initiative called Artworks, and the tickets for those can be bought at the Chamber. And that's going to be, I believe, June, and that June 1 to 2 at the Bayside. And then there's also the Oceanside Concert Series at the Knox United Church, and they're going to have a renewal February 14th from 12 to 3 at Sirius Coffee.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wasn't able to attend most of the Mayor's Roundtable on Saturday, as I was in a half-day session with the Vancouver Island Regional Library. They have 29 new trustees, so it's an overwhelming new trustees and board, so the board was elected at that point in time. I just wanted to bring awareness as well as that our library is currently under some renovations, and that's an amazing thing because there's only 4 that are currently in part of the grants and applications that are being doing some renovation and major work. So that's really great. And they had an alleyway, kind of technology alley, and a lot of great different things. One of the booths there had VHS and vinyl records, and showing how you could digitalize them and put them to the cloud and to CDs and everything like that. And they had another table that's really similar to a group in Parksville, that the makerspace that's over at the MAC and that as well. So I'm hoping to maybe get those 2 groups together a little bit more so that we can get some more information and communication about some of the different activities that are ongoing in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to make a notice of motion in regards to the outdoor performance project proposal. So that the city staff be directed to include the outdoor performance venue under the community park improvements as part of the city's community culture and recreation grant application. Also that staff be directed to include $1.2 million in the 2019 capital budget for construction of the outdoor performance stage. Thirdly, that staff be directed to include a budget for continued maintenance and operation of the facility in the annual budget beginning in 2019. Lastly, a similar motion was passed by Council in December 3rd, 2018. As the grant application is now being completed, it has been determined that wording of the resolution passed requires some slight rewording in order to be eligible for the funding, and therefore the following motion is being put forward in front of Council.
Thank you. Councillor Press.
I thought I'd give you guys an update. Could I have your mic off there, please? Just regarding the echo.
Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Mayor, the motion put forward by Councillor Chandler actually requires a vote of council this evening if we're to make the grant application deadlines. So if we could respectfully request that consideration from council, it would allow staff to continue with the grant.
Councillor Greer has seconded that motion. Any discussion on it? It's been up before. It's housekeeping more than anything, is it not? All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. Okay. Now we can go on.
All right, thanks. No problem. I thought it was the notice there, but yeah, it's good to get that one done. I wanted to give you guys an update on the ECHO, the early childhood, with the child care planning grant that we had passed a motion on. So since we last met the City of Nanaimo, they have also passed a motion to apply for this grant planning application. And they have a social planner, John Horn, who, with their help, has decided to take the lead applicant position for this grant. With that, Qualicum Beach, Parksville, Nanaimo, and I believe Lanceville has already been on board with it. And tomorrow the RDN is going to be having a delegation up here for them, looking for the support. So in total, that would bring it to $125,000 for this child care planning grant. Because they have that application in now, so with the time that they're facing, I'd like to propose a motion without notice, just regarding that we provide a letter in support for Nanaimo to be the lead applicant, so that we'd be teaming up with them, because when we passed our motion before, they hadn't had a chance to discuss it. So with that said, the motion would be that we, like I say, provide a letter of support for the Regional Child Care Planning Grant Program application to be submitted to the City of Nanaimo.
Seconded by Councillor Patterson. All in favor? Opposed? There we go.
Thank you.
Does any member of council have any other notices of motion? Seeing none. Special business. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that pursuant to Section 91A, C, and D of the Community Charter Council, proceed to a closed meeting to consider items relating to personal information about identifiable individual, labor, and security of the property of the municipality. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Chandler. All those in favor? Carried. 7:35.
5-minute break.
A 5-minute break would be in order.